Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I am Brian Keith, and today we have an incredible guest, a one-of-a-kind guest. You know that I like to interview people who have done something 10,000 times to help us get a deep understanding of what they're working on. And we have someone like that for you today. Kari Owens is a life coach, mindset practitioner, speaker, creator of the Sacred Self Journal, and she helps women discover how to build a healthy relationship with themselves, own who they are, so they can step into their own grounded confidence. Now, for all the men listening to the show, you might think, hey, what about me? Well, the good news is that while she focuses on tools for women, of course, these ideas about how to talk to yourself, they apply to all of us. Now, the guest today is also special in another way, which is that this is Kari Owens, the woman who I am thrilled beyond belief to be engaged to. Welcome to the show, Kari.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here on Redbeard Radio.
I'm so excited because I've had a wonderful 3 years of my life getting to learn from you more about self-talk, how to connect with yourself, how to talk through things on yourself. And like many entrepreneurs, I suffer from a lot of chatter in my head. And we've had a lot of conversations over 3 years around chatter, self-talk, framing of things. And what I'd like to do in this interview is get some specific tools that you advise your clients with on how to go calm down some of that chatter, or how to change the relationship of how you talk to yourself, how to bring more awareness of that up, all those kind of things that I've heard you talk about so many of your clients getting great results.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tools. And I think one of the things that we have to start with, and speaking specifically to entrepreneurs, there's, I think, even more chatter that often happens because you're doing something that is going against the grain of most people. And so there's a lot more, let's call them voices, that might come up, like doubt, or, feeling unsure, or fear of failure, or, not being good enough. All of those things, it can be amplified as being in your entrepreneurial journey.
Well, let's take a baby step. Let's say an entrepreneur has the self-talk in their head. And what do you think a common thing is that an entrepreneur says to themselves? Feel free to take an example from me or you.
I think one of the most common ones is this going to be good enough?
Yeah. And so, well, first off, you have to notice that something's going on. How can a person tune in to listening to how they're talking to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, with every single client that I have, I say that listening is the first step. And you might have also heard this in the sense of awareness. Being aware is important. But really, the key thing about awareness, because anyone can be aware to anything. You might have behaviors that you're aware to, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to change anything about them or do anything about them. And so developing the muscle of listening to yourself allows you to actually slow down and be in the present. And a lot of the voices that we might hear, or thoughts that we might have, take us out of the present, and they sometimes put us in the future. So we have that sort of anxious future forward thinking about, is this going to be good enough? Is someone going to like my product? Is anyone going to buy, right? Like all those thoughts that an entrepreneur might have. And so if we can really listen to, okay, I am currently experiencing self-doubt, or I'm currently experiencing feeling unsure about this product. What is it that I'm really afraid of? What can I really listen to here about why this doubt is coming up? And the moment that we pause and allow ourselves to really listen is when we can create a deeper understanding, instead of letting that thought run wild and take over and, cause all kinds of anxiety or stops to action, where we just don't take action on something, which I think is often something entrepreneurs also experience. And being able to really slow down to listen to yourself is truly a skill that helps you develop that understanding.
You mentioned taking a pause. Once you've noticed you're having some self-talk that you want to sit with, and you go take that pause, what should an entrepreneur do during that pause to help themselves either change their energy state or go deeper, or what?
Yeah, it might sound cliche, but one of the first things that comes to my mind is to breathe. We don't realize often just how much we are caught up, or that our thoughts are kind of spooling our energy, and whatever energy we're coming at with something, right? If it's anxiety or if it's fear, we're moving with that, right? That's the energy we're using to then create whatever it is you're building or however it is you're thinking about your launch. And so in that pause, you get to take a few different directions, really. One direction could be, okay, what is it that I'm actually feeling? Why am I actually doubting this? Or why am I actually feeling like questioning that this might not be good enough? Like, what in me is not able to see, the true potential in this? And that might be able to come from journaling or just asking yourself those kinds of questions to kind of take the power back over the thought. Another avenue might look like seeing for yourself, like, okay, I'm having this doubt. What is the mindset that I actually want to have? I'm currently maybe sitting in doubt or in fear, and I notice that I'm taking action from that place. Everything that I'm doing or all my thoughts about this launch are about that it's not going to work or that people aren't going to buy or enough people aren't going to sign up. Instead, what is the mindset that I want to have? How do I want to be thinking about this launch? Because that is the energy that we bring to something, right? We can create what we want by, or what we don't want by, our energy. And so really being able to look at and pause and saying, why am I having these thoughts? What in me is doubting myself or this process? And or then saying, what is the mindset that I actually want to adopt? What is the energy that I actually want to bring to this project or to this launch or product or whatever it might be?
So the Kari Owens process is pause, breathe, and then set an intention, as opposed to just reacting, which we're so often in a reaction mode, which is those feelings you're talking about. Oh, this thing's happened. Oh, it's not going to work. Oh, I'm afraid. Instead, saying, well, how do I want to experience this thing after we've taken a breath, right?
Yeah, you used a great word, which I often use, which is reactive. So we're either in reactive mode or in responsive mode. And reactive mode is operating out of our unconscious state, subconscious state. And responsive mode is operating out of our conscious state. So when we are conscious, when you're listening to yourself, when you are aware and you are conscious of the thoughts you're having and how they're impacting you, you're going to respond to a situation rather than subconsciously react. And subconsciously reacting is just really moving through the motions, right? Getting yourself from one stage to another. And, there's always going to be times in your life where you are reactive. We all are. We have a subconscious for a reason. But when we can step more into that conscious place is when we have more power to create what it is that we want to happen, to be able to improve the way that we think about things, the state of our mental health, the way that our mind works in relationship to how we feel about ourselves or how you feel about your business. And it's from that conscious place that you can respond to whatever the situation might be. I think about dealing with, maybe really difficult conversations as an entrepreneur or really hard customer service things. Like if you're in a reactive state and you're never listening to what's going on inside, you're always coming at something from reacting instead of consciously responding.
How do you know that you're responding and not reacting? Which is to say that sometimes I may think that I'm in an elevated, doing a good job of interacting with something, energy state. And then in retrospect, I think, oh, I could have handled that better. Oh, I was reacting. Oh, I was more emotional. I was more my hindbrain self instead of being the more elevated version of myself that I want to bring to a conversation. How can we know in the moment, are we responding or are we reacting?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that. First thing that comes to me is that it really is a muscle. So when I say that, it's something that you have to get to understand, like what it actually feels like, right? Like, oh, right, this is what it feels like to pause and to consider my response to the situation or to this thought or to how I'm feeling rather than just knee-jerk reaction. And it takes, some time to really get to that place of, okay, right, this is easy. I'm just responding to most everything. But I would say the main thing that is different about responding rather than reacting is that there is always some pause. Like the pause is always there, whether or not you are consciously telling yourself to pause or not. It's just always there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a very long pause, but there is always a pause between a response versus a reaction. There's no pause in a reaction. In a response, there is that more consideration, more intentionality, more presence with yourself. Whereas when you're reacting, you're not really present with yourself.
I'm reminded of what somebody wrote, I don't know who, about the difference between humans and animals, that humans appear to be the only creatures that can really pause and reflect before taking an action. And that the more we get better at that, which, what did we learn as kids? Something about counting to 10, or perhaps take a deep breath. Are you angry? Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Because that can just change everything. And I've noticed sometimes I'm finishing writing some important Facebook post to put up there for my business, and then I notice, I click send, and what do? I breathe. Why is that meaningful? Because I wasn't breathing.
Yeah.
Insanity. What kind of fool does not breathe in writing something important? This fool right here. And it's not just once. I only notice it some of the time. But taking that pause and saying, I'm going to breathe, and then I'm going to go and get out of this reactive and get into this responsive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes we don't realize how much space we can actually give ourselves. We operate in a very fast-paced world, society, where, especially with technology, the trigger to react to something right away is so easy. We're constantly being stimulated or constantly being asked something of us, even just in your day-to-day life. And so really being able to respond is knowing that you have a choice to create the pace of something. So you can pause, you can take time to respond to something that has to do with your work, whether that's, an angry email or a Facebook post, or you can take time to respond to your significant other, but really knowing that you can create the intentional space to know that you're stepping into a conscious response rather than reaction. We do not have to always be in reactive mode. And I think that there is actually something very liberating about that.
I love that phrase you use, knowing that you can choose the pace. Let's say you're a typical entrepreneur who feels like they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Where does a person start with really changing the pace of their environment? Do you recommend that people start with changing like what they do before they get to work, or when they first get to work, or in the middle of their day, or around their eating habits, or they're listening to this and they go, wow, I don't really control the pace as well as I could, and they want to change? Where do they start?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think that this is so important. And it's like one of the most important things because, like I said, we don't realize how much control we actually do have, or how much power we do have. I think that oftentimes we believe that so much of our life is just out of our hands and we just have to kind of like move through it or get through it. And at the same time, recognizing, as an entrepreneur myself, that it can be hard during different seasons of your entrepreneurial journey to create the pace or to slow down. I've experienced that myself. I know what it's like to have launches. I know what it's like to build something from scratch and, be working on it all the time, well into the evening, right? And so I think one of the most important things in really coming to honor and to know that you can set the pace is having something that grounds you, whether that's, a daily practice, whether that's a reminder on your phone to tell you to take a break, to take a breath, to meditate for 5 minutes, or to just go outside and get some fresh air on your face. Something that's always going to bring you back to the present, to remind you this is what is now, this is what is real, and being able to ground yourself in that.
I love it. Kari, if folks want to connect with you around changing their pace in their life or dig more into your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me at KariOwens.com or on Instagram at Kari's Full Soul. I do coaching with clients all over the world, private and group coaching, and I offer retreats right now on Orcas Island in Washington. And I absolutely love connecting with people on, really helping them understand how to build a relationship with themselves that helps them create the life that they ultimately want to have.
Now, you also have the Soul Power podcast. Which episode of that do you think people should listen to first if they want to continue this line of thought with you?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say start at the very beginning of the podcast and just keep going. The episodes from the beginning are outlined in a way that supports you and takes you through a lot of what I take my clients through.
This, dear friends listening, is a key difference between Kari and myself. My podcast approach was, I'm going to interview a whole bunch of smart people and we're going to talk about stuff. Whereas Kari, you curated this process this letting people move through this process of thinking and feeling, which is what you do with your clients. And so the result of it is it's this curated process, which is quite a bit different from the just interview this person on this topic and somebody else on a very different topic you find on Redbird Radio.
I love it. Well, as you know, and as entrepreneurs listening know, there is value in everything and in every method. So we can all get something from each and every way that we go at it.
Wonderful. Kari Owens, folks, it's KariOwens.com. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.